think this is one of the unique projects we have, as it was an first investment from state level government. So this is not MasAgro as invested by Zagarpa, but took the Zagarpa investment and received an additional investment from the state government. And I say investment because the minister who took the decision clearly asked for return on investment and indicators that show economic progress of his investment. So I think it's going to be a very interesting seminar, and with no further ado, Lupita.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for being here. I'm quite excited to share with you this work that we have been doing the last 3 years. And also a bit nervous, even though I feel at home. It's like impressive having all this public here. And also online, thank you. Well, the context of this presentation, it's going to be about 6 topics: agricultural innovation systems, the context of Mexico and Guanajuato about these topics, how we implement this agricultural innovation system in Guanajuato, public extension system, our achievements, the challenge, and some conclusions. So starting with the concept about agricultural innovation system, I'm going to talk about 3 concepts, starting with agricultural innovation, which is a process whereby individuals or organizations bring existing or new products into use to increase effectiveness, competitiveness, resilience to shocks, or environmental sustainability, thereby contributing to achieve food and nutrition security, economic development, and sustainable resource management. The innovation has 3 components: technological or hardware knowledge, or the software, and also an organizational change, the hardware. And then we have the agricultural innovation system concept. As the difference about the agricultural innovation is that agricultural innovation is about processes, and this is about more organizations and individuals are involved in the generation, and also create change, not only at the technical level, but also in the policy and the institutional context that governs the way such interactions and process take place. The system change, as I said, is not only technical, but also social and institutional in agricultural innovation systems. It's a process where a lot of actors or stakeholders are involved. The research is participatory. The innovation is driven by multiple actors in the system. And the system change and collaboration are the drivers of the outscaling. So after these concepts, I just want to show a bit, I'm gonna try to draw a bit how we did it in Guanajuato. And I'm going to start with a bit of the context because it influenced the shape of how this agricultural innovation system is taking place in Guanajuato. I'm going to talk about the agroecology, previous efforts, the public extension system in Mexico, and the panorama in Guanajuato. Starting with the agroecology, Guanajuato has 3 different agroecologies. The Bajío area is like the most productive agroecology with a mild weather, good rainfall. It has about 600 to 900 millimeters in some areas. It has good and fertile soils, vertisols. And in the north, we have shallow soils, erratic rainfalls, little access to water, and the production is scarce. And also we have the Sierra, that it's a mountain area with also limited rainfall and limited space to sow and a lot of slopey areas. So that has implications on the production. So the yield, the corn, the yield of the corn, it's, as you can see in the Bajío area in the south, it's more productive. Like the average is about 4 to 7 tons of corn, grain corn per hectare, whereas as you go to the northern area and the Sierra, you have like productions of less than, in some cases, an average production of less than 1 ton per hectare. So we have this landscape, very different landscape. I did something. No, no. Oh, okay. But also, we didn't depart from zero in Guanajuato. There were a lot of previous efforts where CIMMYT also interact and had a lot of influence. And I want to highlight 3 previous efforts that I think that also give shape to this effort of MasAgro-Guanajuato. The first one is the one driven by the NARS, the INIFAP, which was called the Productor Experimentador, or farmer research. It was also a public extension effort funded by with public resources that lasted about 20 years. I think it was like 10 years in Guanajuato. And the characteristics of this effort were that the extension agent was in charge of research and development on site with the farmer, and the idea was that farmer got appropriate of the scientific method, and therefore he could make their own research and innovation. There was continuous work with farmer groups, about 3 to 5 years, and the focus was research on action. Afterwards, there was an effort of the FIRA, which is an institution of the public Mexican bank. And during the 80s and 90s, they sent some farm advisors to CIMMYT to get trained in conservation agriculture, also by that time called no tillage. So they were trained, and then these advisors came back and started to give it technical assistance funded by FIRA, that also gave credits to farm production and subsidies to equipment for no tillage. Then they claim after 25 years that 65% of the irrigated production in Guanajuato is uses conservation agriculture. So that is a bit relative, but that's a figure that FIRA has after 25 years of promoting conservation agriculture. Then we have the Associate, which is a civil organization that also brought technical assistance based on the no-tillage promotion, or siembra directa, as they called it at that time. It was a public and private partnership where CIMMYT also is a member of that association. They also promoted the formalization of informal working groups, and also were dependent on government funds, even though it was a public-private partnership. It was quite interesting that they always relied on public funds in spite of having these private members within the association. So talking about the public extension system in Mexico, it is important to say that there's no formal public extension system. It was disbanded in the 90s due to political reforms. So it was decentralized, outsourced, and co-financed. So that means that at the moment, the Ministry of Agriculture, Zagarpa, or all the levels, the government levels, hire private farm advisors or despachos to operate the public programs. So up to 2010, there were 8,000 private contractors doing this job. Also, one characteristic of the agricultural sector is that it's divided in 3 main categories with different challenges and needs. We have a buoyant, capital-intensive commercial sector, which accounts for 50% of the total farmers. We have a smallholder sector, but this with ties to the market, especially the internal market, which accounts for 35% of the total share, and a subsistence sector that produces for household consumption and relies on external non-agricultural activities for a large part of its income, which it accounts for 50% of the total share. Also, the characteristic of this extension system is the lack of interaction, collaboration, and institutional feedback. Those 4 characteristics are well implemented as characteristics of efficient innovation systems. And what the OECD says is that Mexico has the components, but not the efficiency. So the agricultural extension function is in the hands of unexperienced farm advisor, to say the least, right? We all know. It lacks of impact evaluations. There's only administrative evaluation. How many people signed for, how many people were supported, how many hectares, how many farmers, but not what is the real impact in the field. There's lack of accountability and also lack of incentives or consequences of not having results. So then you can explain about the inefficiencies within the system. The panorama in Guanajuato is not different from what I mentioned in Mexico. The different farming systems have very different levels of technification and access to information. It's strongly related to the agroecology. The Bajío has more access, more technification, more investment than the north or the Sierra. The Sierra is disconnect of the world. There's lack of reliable information for farmers, private sector. The private sector is leading the technical recommendations, so they're the transnationals, all the input sellers recommend the product according to the problem or according to their knowledge of this. So that's the source, the main source of information of the farmers. The research and academic institutions have limited reach. Doesn't mean that they don't make their effort, but it's limited. And they have little connection with farmers. But a characteristic of Guanajuato is that there's a multitude of institutions and individuals, both public and private, with similar objectives in production, sustainability, and innovation, but with little or non-existent articulation. And something that is interesting, that a lot of these institutions have 20 years, like in the market. The stakeholders know each other, but they don't work together. So, well, that's a panorama, and then something happened, and as we said, the stars aligned. And that started in 2011 with the MasAgro agreement signature between CIMIT and Zagarpa. And with that effort, between 2011 and 2013, the Hub Bajío started the construction of infrastructure, as the president says. And then the stakeholder identification and linkage through associate, which existed. Then in 2012, there was an administrative transition and signature of the state level agreement between CIMIT and the state government. And these two guys were instrumental for this to happen. These were important stakeholders with capacity of decision within the internal politics. One is Javier Usabiaga, which was at the moment the Ministry of Agriculture, but was Minister of Agriculture at country level in 2000, 2006, so on. And then there was Fernando Galvan, which was the Director of Innovation within the ministry. So those two were important linkage within the state government to concrete the project at the state level. By 2013, there was a hub meeting, and there were information exchanged by all those people participating, and that information was the base of the framework agreement with the state. And from it, in 2014, there was a formal establishment of a local team. So now I'm going to try to explain how I visualize the agricultural innovation system in Guanajuato. Sorry. As with the innovation components. As I said, the innovation has three components: the software, the hardware, and hardware. And I want to illustrate how do we see that in Guanajuato. At the software level, we have a concept that we are promoting, the hub model. Maybe all of you know about it. We also promote non-linear extension approach as opposed to the current system, which is more research driven, farm advisor, farmer driven. The integrated focus, which includes the production system, scales, context. We take into account all that for the intervention, technological intervention, as opposed to the public concept of Sistema Producto, which is one product and all the stakeholders around it to make it productive. So, but in terms of farm advisory, if you are in the Sistema Producto corn, then you receive assistance only for corn. But what happened when you sow wheat or beans or something, then you run out of advisors. A technological menu as opposed to technological package or one recipe fits for all. And the interinstitutional collaboration. At the legal level, we also have a framework agreement, a multi-annual framework agreement. And also we have an annual agreement and a shared work plan as opposed to the reglas de operación that every public program has every year are published, guidelines that operational rules and guidelines that everybody needs to follow and are quite narrow. And these annual agreements give us some space for operation. Also, the work plan is in synchrony with the agronomic cycle and not the fiscal year. The agreement starts in June and ends up in June the next year. And also the concept at the operational level, we have we implement the technological menu, not technological package. We use a lot of information and communication technologies. And we have also this concept of multi-use, multi-crop machinery. So that's what we put into place based on the hub model. And in Guanajuato, we have 8 research platforms, 30 modules, and more than 300 extension areas. And it's a methodology that we are implementing, and this was documented by ICA in 2016. But I think we have also an organizative component, which is, I think, key for the success of this project. The difference of Guanajuato is that we have a local multidisciplinary team, whereas also in Productor we have regional teams. So then, like have a local multidisciplinary teams gives strength to the state. But also we have a scientific and institutional support units within CIMIT, with all the SIP team, but also the international programs of wheat and corn and socioeconomics, but also with the NARS, with the INIFAP, with the local expertise, and the connection with the government at the local and federal level, which give us access, or give the farmers access to first-hand information. We also have an interinstitutional public and private collaboration network and a communication strategy, which helps a lot to massify the information to several levels of stakeholders. So that's what we have, and what we achieved. I think we have several achievements at different levels as well. And at the technical level, I have to say that we are promoting a lot of different technologies. One example is the Green Seeker that Ivan Ortiz has experimented and experienced several years ago, and that we have put that in use with farmers in the 3 main crops in Guanajuato under irrigation schemes, which is corn, barley, and wheat. So at per hectare, we on average, we save about 37 to 56 kgs of nitrogen. But in that year, in 2015, 2016, there were 600 hectares using the Green Seeker technology. So if we make the equivalence of amount of fertilizer with ammonium sulfate, which is one of the most used sources of fertilizer, we found that on average we saved about 120 tons of fertilizer that we didn't use, and that accounts for about $500,000 pesos. Also, we scaled the use of Trichoderma versus Fusarium as a biological control. There was one concern of the farmers. This Fusarium, especially in the southwest of Guanajuato, it's an issue in the wheat and barley production, and more or less also in corn. So we got in contact with the state direction of plant protection, and then recommend us the Trichoderma, and they gave us the information, like where to get it, because it's a technology that people barely knows, and also it's hard to get the products. So we contact a couple of suppliers that were selling commercially this product, and one of the advisors put this trial with 4 different products, and also an absolute weakness with no treatment. And then we saw results. They were measuring like roots contamination, the number of plants contaminated, the sanity of the corn and the grain, and we see significant results with the use of Trichoderma. So we did a couple of demonstration days, and the farmers were interested. So the next, but that was in corn, and the main problem was in wheat. So the next, since the farmers saw the effects on corn, on the next season, like 6 months after, they started to buy the doses for 2,000 hectares. It was in 3 municipalities or so. And then in last year, another 2,000 hectares added to this effort. And during in this present autumn-winter season, the supplier has told us that they have sold like more than 3,000 dosage. So we are accounting for at least 3,000 hectares using this product. But also Trimex, which is an important wheat consumer in the region, but also in Mexico, has a program of production of durum wheat in Guanajuato. The last 2 years they are trying to produce durum wheat in Guanajuato, and they decided, based on the information that we supplied, that the seed that they supply to the farmers in this project was had to be inoculated with the Trichoderma prior arrival to the farmers. So actually, it's not only 3,000 hectares. It should be even more, but we don't have the figure, the exact figure. But it is quite important to have like the private companies using the information and putting them in their own projects. One example of how it looks at production level with farmers, I want to present one case of one smallholder farmer in San Miguel de Allende that received advice of one of our advisors. And this farmer was quite committed, and he followed the recommendations to the letter, because sometimes we're not that lucky. There's a lot of mistrust among farmers with new recommendations. So this one decided to do by the letter, and the advisor was quite committed to this farmer. So when he arrived, the average production in irrigation was 5 tons per hectare. That's quite below the average municipal yield, which was 8 tons per hectare. So with the intervention, they managed to reach the 15 tons in just one season. So this gap was due to agronomic mismanagement. But in the at the state level, or with the intervention, we did a lot. We did some arithmetics. We take the information that we have in the DEM with the production, the average production of each municipality that we intervene. And then we compare it with the CIEP, which is the official source of statistics in agriculture in Mexico. So we compared what we had in production minus what the farmers could have without intervention. That's the assumption, that this figure of SIAP is a number without intervention. So what we found is that we constantly, in both irrigated and rain-fed systems, we have a difference, a positive difference between what they could attain and what they obtain with the intervention of the farmers' advisors. The difference is not that big under irrigated conditions, because they have, especially in the Bajío, more technification, but the difference is quite large in under rain-fed conditions, because as I told you, in some places we have just some kgs per hectare, yields of kgs per hectare. In one season, with a good management, we managed to reach the 3 tons per hectare. That's why the figure looks that big. And with this production, with this amount multiplied by the price paid by to the farmer, we have these spillover effects. So it's about 3 millions in 2014 and about 4 million pesos in 2015. So, and the corn is one of the main crops that we have. Also, we are intervening farms in 39 municipalities out of 46 municipalities in the state. The decision of the government was to cover as the most area, like the major area possible. We are quite focused on the Bajío, yes, but we have work in the north as well. And the impact is people is using technologies in about 6,000 hectares. The hectares that we can account for, we don't know how far the impact has gone. But also, I want to highlight like how have we grown, because in 2014 we have only 7 farm advisors and we covered about 80 hectares. But after 2 years of intervention, of continuous intervention with farmers and demonstrations and training, we reach these 6,000 hectares with only 21 advisors. So the growth is not a linear growth. It can be exponential, but we need continuity to get to these figures. We also have put a lot of effort in training and demonstration events. Last year, we did more than 300 events with the assistance of 6,000 people, of whom about 3,000 are farmers. We have a pro and a con about these figures. Only 50% farmers. I think that's a number that can be improved. Like increase the share of the farmers assisting to that event. But the pro is that the other 3,000 people are students, researchers, academics, people from the public and private sector attending to these events. And the advantages, or the assumption, is that they are helping us to spread the word among another farmers. We also have foster farmers organization. Our focus at the beginning, it's quite we focus a lot on the technical change. but as in the innovation system, we have to change the institutional and social status to make real and deep changes. And also we have to attend the demand, the felt needs of the farmers, otherwise they are not going to take our technology. So one of the concerns is marketing. People usually plans the sales of this grain right at the moment of the harvest. And we have a lot of problems in commercialization because there's a lot of, last minute, it's a result of last minute planning. So the farm advisors are improving the access to market schemes such as contract farming. They are also improving access to government subsidies, such as to access to farm machinery equipment. We have a good experience of a machinery central in the north of Guanajuato, where it's one of the abandoned areas in the zone. So I think the highlight is not about the machinery, but the access of the farmers to these kind of subsidies that originally they couldn't afford, or they didn't know how to participate. And also, we are shortening input and output pathways. What it means is that with the organization of farmers, some of them are starting to buy consolidated purchasing of their inputs, but also they are organizing to store their grain and sell directly to consumers. And one example of this is the Farmers Association of La Sandia in the municipality of Leon, that during last year they had some infrastructure, but they didn't know how to use, and they wanted to escape of the intermediaries. So that's what they asked to their advisor, and with the help of the state commercialization direction, and also with Acerca and so on, we made the linkage, and they managed to commercialize 5,000 tons of grains. And they were directly selling to these 4 consumers, which Nutre is one of the big consumers in the region, and also Proan. So they not just store their own grain, they found the linkage to the consumers, but also diversified their markets. And the association is composed by 18 farmers, but the benefit was not just for the 18 farmers, but for farmers of 59 communities around the area. Also, the work of the team has strengthened and articulated the innovation network. Each dot, it's an actor and stakeholder, and we can see the formal interactions in 2010 and 2014 and 2015. This was an independent research carried by Dr. Roberto Rendon of CSTAM, Chapingo, and the results shown that the formal relationships among the collaborators increased 14 times as compared to the start of MasAgro. We have developed a set of public and private partnerships, and the images here are not a paper agreement or a shake agreement, but institutions and people collaborating with the funding, like taking care of the infrastructure, selling inputs, or promoting conservation agriculture, or giving training to farmers and field farm advisors. So when your picture is here, it means that you have contributed into something to MasAgro. Not everything is a better process. We have turns as well. And the challenges are the continuity. We still depend on public funds and therefore also administrative transitions. I think as MasAgro, we have overcome one huge transition during 2012 and 2013, but also in Guanajuato, we have overcome one transition of the ministry last year, and one more is coming next year. So that's a continuous challenge. But also, my question is if it has to continue the way it is, and how long? Should it be public or private? We have to learn to manage scaling, outscaling. We have grown, we had exponential growth, but 6,000 hectares as compared to 600,000 hectares of potential just in that state. How are we going to massify this information? But also how to root the innovation dynamics. Even though we are within the public sector and partnering with the state government, it seems like we are a dot within the whole system. We haven't rooted that dynamic in the whole extension system in the state. How do we influence public policy, like in a way that is actually stated in the public policy, not just in a program? How do we do this process self-sustainable? Under what schemes and who has to do it? How do we manage data? We have a lot of data, and we have innovative approaches starting to run, but we have a lot of data stored, and how do we use that data? So that's a challenge. Social inclusion. More than 85% of the farmers working currently at MasAgro-Guanajuato are male, with an age of 50 years old, with an average age of 56 years. So we have a challenge of include women, the youth, subsistence farmers, because the farmers that are more open to change are the middle and smallholders and indigenous group. We practically are not touching the indigenous groups identified in the state. Also, career pathways for professionals and human capital from this process, especially the local ones. We have the challenge to open spaces and make them grow within the system to avoid the loss of this talent that we are forming within the system, to make it a root. So my conclusions of this effort are that the team as a whole is bridging the gap between farmers, knowledge, and institutions, resulting in direct improvements at production unit level as well as state level. The project has shown adaptive capacity and resilience. What have we adapted? We transit from technological package to technological menu to adaptive technological intervention to dynamic recommendation domains, and that it's something that we are starting to work with CIAT. But also we have moved from technology-driven approach to marketing and associativity, and we start thinking on how to influence policy. MasAgro-Guanajuato is an innovation system within the public sector, built from previous efforts, those lessons learned, knowledge, technology, and the articulation of existing stakeholders and institutions. MasAgro-Guanajuato, as a local innovation broker, is a mesh in the engine that catalyzes the basic grain production chain in the state. So that's about all. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Do you have some numbers on the retention ratio of those farmers that start out with technology for the first time? Second question, would be if you would reply with your vision or your opinion about one of the challenges that you were suggesting, which is... Yes. The second is about one of the challenges that you were highlighting, which is how to keep the innovation system working beyond the life, the cycle life of the project, right? What are the key factors to make it happen?
Well, the first question, we are currently carrying a work with CSTEM to measure that evolution of the network. So I don't have the figure right now, but I have to say that it's quite dynamic, the exchange rate, for several factors. And one is farmers' willingness to change. Second, the permanence of the farmers' advisors. We have a lot of, every year we have a rotation of 3 to 5 technical advisors. So that's something that creates a lot of rotation and alternance of farmers, and it conditions the continuity of the work. About the challenges, I've discussed a lot with the group in Guanajuato, and we see like 2 ways. The first way is, as I said, influencing the public policy. In the multidisciplinary team, we need people, experts on public policy, that are able to translate all those lessons of those technical and social and commercial lessons in the field into public policy. In that way, it can be rooted within the system. The second idea that we have is to create like business units that are created with these ideas behind. There's a lot of opportunities. I think that a lot of market opportunities that can be developed, and in that way we can sustain the idea. But I think we a lot of time are quite focused on the technology and the farmer and the production, but not in, we have to develop entrepreneurial abilities. So those are the tracks I see.
Yeah, thanks. It was interesting. My question is, you talked a lot about the technology. You talked about, in your introduction, you talked about different interventions, state interventions in the past. But compared to the MasAgro model, what have the farmers said? Have they appreciated the new approach? What have they found different in the new approach, better in the new approach? Because I found that a little lacking in the
Okay.
presentation.
I think what I wanted to illustrate with that mention is that a lot of farmers relate MasAgro-Guanajuato with that effort. So since a lot of those farmers had good experience, some others they didn't have good experience, so they related. So it could be like Associate, it could be like FIRA, it could be like Productores Experimentados. So then I can get in. It's also a filter, a kind of a filter where people decide depending on what was their experience on the other, in the previous efforts. But also I think they recognize the differentiation is the abilities of the advisors. that are more integral and more holistic, not in the farmer's words, but for instance, Associate was quite focused on no tillage. And if you do no tillage, and otherwise you don't enter the group. So with this technological intervention, what we do is to ask the farmer what are the needs, and we started also with a focus on conservation agriculture, but we found that we have another entering points like fertilizing or markets or so on, and we have to address that. So that's a change that I know the farmers appreciate of this project, and also the connection with different institutions, like having Ravising or Rajaram or Ivan in their fields, like directly exchanging knowledge. That's something that the farmers really, really appreciate and see the difference of MasAgro. Maybe I don't know if that answers your question.
Lupita, excellent presentation. Thank you very much. As scientists in the room, we are quite used to having as much factors as we can under control, and then look at the one variable we want to change. If I see your presentation, there's everything except having things under control. What I mean is, you have it under control, but clearly in a different way, as there are many factors you don't directly control. Not even the farm advisors are not hired by CIMMYT. All the many stakeholders, they can all take other decisions. You cannot fire. You cannot fire the scientist from INIFAP, something like that. So how did you do it? What is the main important thing to still have things moving towards a shared objective while you are not really exerting that direct control? What's the magic? How could you make them go into the right direction?
I wish I know. No, I think it's a follow-up. That's one of the advantage, because we are quite used to go to a meeting and then, 3 agreements, and the next time we meet, we discuss on the same topics, and we didn't do anything. So that's the first session we prepare, and we follow up the agreements. And we talk a lot with our collaborations. I think collaboration is the most challenging issue within these schemes, because we have a lot of interests around, a lot of jealousy, a lot of people with awful experiences. But I think that what we have to do is to recognize the talent that we have and the abilities that each one has, and put them into work. Because sometimes also we have a lot of abilities and knowledge, but we are like in one comfort zone, and what we have done is to take a lot of people, even us, from our comfort zones, and that has potential, is that a word? the collaboration and of different stakeholders. And I mean that's the reach I have to manage that collaboration.
Your presentation was super nice. It's amazing work and a lot of years. You have identified a lot of your actors, the collaboration and the patterns. Do you think that Guanajuato is a shooting star? Is something special in Mexico, or you think that this innovation system can be replicated in another states?
Well, that's the idea. I mean, Guanajuato has been in the laboratory of CIMMYT and many others stakeholders that are interested on how to do it. I think, of course, we have a lot of elements that can be replicable, but of course, also we have elements that are unique to each context. And that's, for instance, the collaboration with CIMMYT that has the 50 years that has the institution. It's quite rooted in Guanajuato as well in Sonora. But if you go to Oaxaca or Chiapas, there's a limited presence of CIMMYT. But I think what we can reply is the methods, like the lessons learned on how to build a team, what skills, what kind of people do we need to have this multidisciplinary team? What are the profiles? What are the what is the work that they have to do? The roles that we need to play? How to hunt the institutions that are key for to collaborate? How to involve those collaborations? Those are lessons that can be quite replicable, but I think the answer is that you can't replicate the model. That's a mistake that we usually do, because we want to have the recipe and do the same recipe in other places, and that's where failure occurs. So we have, as Ken said, I always say with conservation agriculture, we have to learn the principles and the ingredients, but we have to adapt our own recipe to the context. Okay. Thank you very much.